Hi, everybody. Welcome to this next episode of All In, the Sustainable Business Podcast. I'm Chris Coulter, and I'm here with my wonderful co-hosts, David Grayson and Mark Lee. Hi, David. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Nice to be here again today.
Yes, wonderful to see you. And hi, Mark. How's it going?
Doing well, Chris, and lovely to be assembled on this April day to talk. So looking forward to it.
That's great. Yes. And we have a very special guest, a good friend and colleague, Alanna Boyd. Hi, Alanna. How's it going?
Hey, Chris. Great. Thank you all for having me here today.
Yeah, we have two Torontonians on the call, so we've balanced things out a little bit. Finally, we've got a good mix.
But I don't consider myself still a Torontonian. I grew up in Victoria, BC, and I've lived here for 15 years. So
you're still feeling the West Coast pull.
Yeah.
And Mark's a
you revealed it now. It's actually two British Columbians with Alanna. I grew up in Saturn Harbor. So yeah. He tried. He thought Ontario had the day, but no.
No, one day we can aspire. But Alanna, you and I have known each other for quite a while. You were in mining when we met. So you've gone from mining to now you're the Chief Sustainability Officer at Sun Life Financial, a global insurance company. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Sun Life and then also how you got there? Like and I know you didn't begin in sustainability. You were in, more corporate affairs kind of role, but how did all this evolve?
Yeah. So I'll start with Sun Life. So Sun Life is a large Canadian life insurance and asset management company. One of the little secrets that I don't think a lot of people know is that we're actually Canada's largest asset manager. We own a collection of asset management firms through Sun Life Capital Management, as well as MFS Investment, which is a public listed equities active manager in the US that invented the mutual fund. And then we have large insurance businesses in Canada, the US, and across Asia in 8 different jurisdictions. We've been at things a long time. We're a 160-year-old company, but we're not your grandfather's insurance company. We're pretty modern, awesome culture, great place to work, hard at work on all things digital and AI, and just have a really great culture, a really great place to work, and a long-time commitment to sustainability. Right.
How long have you been there? How many years has it been?
10 years coming up this fall.
10 years. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I've been here 10 years. I didn't set out to work in a global insurance and asset management company. You're right. Prior to this, I was working at Barrick Gold, which is a global gold mining company. And there I was working on a broader set of corporate affairs issues, geopolitical, government affairs, as well as human rights issues. I had worked a lot on some pretty significant issues to do with human rights and environmental issues. And prior to that, had worked in various levels of government. But started my studies in development and globalization back in the day, where there were not sustainability programs like there are now. So I did a master's in international political economy, and I think one of my first jobs was living in Bolivia, working, learning Spanish and doing some development work overseas. So long part of my trajectory was sustainability.
Amazing. I did an MA in international political economy too. So at least we have that together if we are born in the same part of the country.
Yeah.
Missing geography tied up on education. Alanna, I'm just curious. There was a joke embedded in there about not being my grandfather's insurance company. And I just thought, how would that actually be different? So how has insurance evolved? What did it look like? And maybe what stereotypes do you constantly run into? It sounded like that was the root of the joke versus how insurance works today.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of insurance companies as, kind of boring and staid and, a lot of actuaries. And, I think particularly when we're thinking about sustainability and social impact, that really brings to life how we're very different. So I'll give you an example. In the past, if you were applying for life insurance and, the company would just, take all of your different health markers and they would just give you a price and then here's your insurance, right? We weren't trying to change the risk. We weren't trying to make you healthier. We were actually just pricing the risk and giving you a policy. now Sun Life and a lot of our peers in the industry, we're trying to make you healthier. Our purpose as a company is lifetime financial security and living healthier lives, and we really mean that. So, there are folks that don't have access to insurance, or we see in our claims data and in our product offerings, there are things we can do to actually prevent you making a claim, right? In Canada, for example, disability claims are, mental health, is the number one cause of disability claims through our group providers. Well, why don't we actually try to tackle mental health and provide offerings to reduce the claims? So we don't, we want to pay out claims. We'll pay out your claims, but it's better if you're actually healthier. And so we take seriously that role that we have access to this data. We can see what's going on in society in some ways, and we can intervene now to actually make you healthier as opposed to just being a claims payer. And we're really focused on the client. In the past, insurance companies were very focused on advisors who would come and sell you products and services. Advisors still have an incredibly important role to play, particularly in financial security, but we're also really focused on the client experience, which includes things like digital and apps and claims payout and empathy and, things that people might not traditionally associate with an insurance company.
Yeah, terrific. No, and then they can hear the evolution in that, and it's a remarkable pivot that is your purpose today. So fantastic. I hope we'll dig further.
And I'm going to turn off my chat so that I don't get more beeps and boops while we're conversing.
Yep.
And maybe go ahead, David. Yeah, jump in.
So we've been trying to find the connections with Alanna. So my dad spent his entire working life in life insurance. I'm fascinated about this idea that you move from simply pricing the risk and pricing the policy to this much more personalized approach. And just how do customers respond to that? Because I could imagine some people saying, this is really kind of quite big brotherish, or this is very kind of nanny state. But do you find generally that customers are positive about this?
Yeah, it depends, right? So a lot of our clients in Canada would be in the group space. So in Canada, we provide group benefits. So if you're a large employer and you want to insure all those paramedical benefits for your employees, you would come to Sun Life. And one of the big, issues that we're dealing with is cost containment, right? That can be expensive for large employers to pay for that. And as drugs become more expensive, specific treatments are becoming available both in Canada and the US. The clients that we have that are large employers really want us to be partners with them to help manage some of these costs. And so those proactive interventions are, really welcome by those large employers. And I would say, what we hear from clients when we do engagement surveys is really, it's tough. It's tough to do financial security and financial planning. It's hard to find, mental health care when you need it, depending on the jurisdiction that you're in. And so, yeah, anything we can do in those kinds of services to help our clients is very welcome. We're learning, right? We don't always hit it the first time. We have this great service in Canada called a mental health coach, which is specifically created so that we can help people navigate the mental health system to try to find care. We would love to see more uptake of that, but so we're learning. We're trying things. Diabetes has long time been our philanthropic cause, but we never asked ourselves, well, how do we use our full business to intervene and prevent diabetes? Are people with diabetes, are they able to access insurance? And a lot of them aren't. So we came out with a special diabetes product that actually, similar to, how people can put, they can monitor their driving and their insurance premiums will go down for car insurance. Same idea. If you work with a coach and help manage your diabetes symptoms and get your blood sugar levels down and you stay on track, we can reduce your premiums and you can have access to life insurance. So those kinds of things are really welcome. And there's a lot of intersectionality too with inclusivity, right? Where people who have diabetes may for other reason also be excluded from the financial system. And so looking at those kinds of barriers to access of our services and products has been hugely welcome. And we're learning and testing and pivoting and figuring out our role there for sure as an insurance company.
So much upside in all that in the industry, and the purpose, and the industry being largely purposeful in what it does, positive co-benefits on things. Coming from the mining industry was a different set of issues and impacts and challenges. I mean, how did you, I'd love to hear about the evolution of coming into Sun Life, from the mining industry where lots of, negative externalities take place, fascinating business too. But then here where there's, paper use, energy use, but things and, small potatoes compared to some of the heavy hitting things of the extractive industry. What was it like? How did you begin the journey? What you want to tell us a bit of that story, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah. I mean, definitely a learning journey. It felt, like and you hit the nail on the head with some of the early issues that we were dealing with 10 years ago. When I joined Sun Life Sustainability, we were thinking about things like single-use plastic, water bottles in meeting rooms, or paper use, or our CSR approach or community approach or philanthropic spend. We weren't really thinking yet about Sun Life and all of the tools that we had available to us in the organization to drive impact. We had set early emissions targets back in 2017, 2016. They weren't net zero, but we were reducing our emissions at the operations level. But of course, in the 2020s, when net zero came about, those became much more robust, and emissions measurement became much more robust, and carbon accounting became more commonplace. And so everything has matured. But those early conversations on sustainability when I came over for mining were definitely, the sound of a record scratch, like, and I had to adapt too, because the mining industry is a much different way of working than a large, stable, very inclusive and collaborative culture of Sun Life. And so I had to learn how to operate a little bit differently. So it wasn't just sustainability was different. I had to learn. But the really awesome thing about that is, as we've evolved our approach to sustainability, we learned more collectively as an organization. We are now into what I think are some of the most fascinating work of my career. Looking at biases and inclusivity of the financial services, understanding how we can drive impact and measure it to prove commercial value. My team runs pilots and accelerators. We're connecting climate change impacts to the health of our employees and those that we underwrite and insure. And then we also have a large asset management businesses. So we're having to understand physical risk and transition risk. And so the depth of the data, the evolution of the maturity of the practice, the people on my team, I have a team now of over 50 globally. When I started at Sun Life, there were 2. And we have, this is an expertise, a field. It's professional. We have a function. We have, we've built an entire operating model and governance system around it. And so it has been it's not very often in your career that you get an opportunity at the corporate level to build something. And I got to build it at Sun Life. And so when we started out 10 years ago, we had a hypothesis about where we thought we could lean in and create value in sustainability. And that was our first sort of purpose-driven impact plan that, Chris, you worked with us on, and we launched in 2019. And then, really last year, something I'm really proud of, in the middle of, what some might call the ESG backlash and people walking back from sustainability commitments, or perceived as walking back from, because I think we know there's a lot going on behind the scenes. We took this moment to say, let's double down. Let's understand what we really are committed to, what sustainability really means to Sun Life. Let's get super crisp on where the business value is and the business imperative of this work is, so that we're doing this for business reasons. And I think this is part of the big shift, right? Where we've seen a lot of values and purpose-driven language, sustainability is in our DNA, things like that. And now this is about, cold hard cash and business value and capability and expertise and understanding the world around us. And it has been an absolute joy and privilege in my career to get the opportunity to do that. And in an organization that was willing to invest build a team, and give me the space and empowerment to do that. So,
and all of us on all of us on this call would say, fantastic. That's exactly the way that businesses should be going. What was the trigger, though? What prompted that first really more systemic review that made the organization question? On the one hand, we've got a charity of the year project with diabetes, but we're not even always offering our core products to people with diabetes. We're not looking at how we really can use all of our data and so on. What prompted that real questioning about what's the most material things for Sun Life?
I think a couple of things. The first thing I would point to is our company purpose. And I'd have to go back. I'm not sure exactly when we rolled out our purpose, but it was around 2017, 2018, around there. And the focus on the client, where our enterprise strategy really pivoted to and became, under our previous CEO, really focused on the client and client impact. And then we rolled out our purpose, which is to help our clients achieve lifetime financial security and live healthier lives. And that purpose just really galvanized our employees. You can see in a corporation when you get things right, it just goes. You don't need a lot of push. It just sort of happens. And my unscientific assessment is the purpose just it just hit the nail on the head. Everybody grabbed it, and we work for a company and we have a purpose and we're purpose-led, and it's about the client and it's about their health and financial security. And then I think what really worked is we connected our approach to sustainability to our purpose. And that took us, I would say, 3 or 4 years of really helping to explain, why is health a sustainable development issue? Why are we talking about health when sustainability, right? Back in 2017, 2018, people thought of it as single-use water, waste, emissions, environmental things. And we really deliberately connected it to health, financial security on the insurance side, right? We made it really clear what the connection was there. And then on the asset management side, beyond just ESG risk as a financial loss, there's also opportunity, right? How are we investing in climate solutions? And we launched 3 sustainability bonds, and we surpassed our sustainable investment goal. So I think the catalyst was really the connection of sustainability to our purpose. Probably 3 years of communicating and building that connection, so that it became very clear to everyone what our role was and the opportunity from a commercial perspective, from a growth perspective. So I just want to give an example to bring that to life, right? When we talk about our purposes on lifetime financial security, well, for who, right? Mm-hmm. And if we want to grow our business, we have stats in Canada around women in particular who are not empowered, don't have access to advisors. They operate differently. We've done training with advisors. Men and women operate differently. They want information differently. They want to interact with their advisor differently. I don't want to go golfing with my advisor for the day. I want to meet for 20 minutes and understand how my portfolio is doing, and I want to move on with my life because I got to feed my kid dinner and I got all these other things to do. I'm generalizing, but you get the point. And so, if we want to grow our business, we need to understand the needs of these underserved groups so that we can be innovating and producing products. So if we want to truly live our purpose and help people achieve lifetime financial security, women and underserved groups are part of that. And so connecting it directly to commercial value and our purpose is what has really unlocked the approach. And then demonstrating how that's happening and the commercial value has been huge.
And Alanna, you built this over time. It's remarkable how much your team has grown. I'm just curious, where are the boundaries now of what your team is responsible for, or at least influences in terms of sustainability performance in the organization? So there's presumably still sustainable operations, and you do care about water and waste and things.
Oh, for sure.
But you penetrated into the client side of things and the interaction and their lifetime kind of health and well-being. You mentioned the investment portfolio, and I'm curious if you help design policy for investment, or do you have a doppelganger on that side that you work with? And then there's the underwriting portion of the business, which, might sometimes conflict with what's in the investment portfolio if things aren't really well thought through. So can you give us, the big circle of what fits?
Yeah. So I would say, our goal in sustainability is to really infiltrate and embed ourselves across the processes. I myself and the team can't be involved in everything, but in a large, well-run organization, there are a lot of processes. So, I'll give you an example when it comes to climate risk, for example. So my team owns climate risk management. We don't, but we have a very well-developed risk management function and team. And so we would have operational risk processes. We have asset management risk processes. We have, insurance risk, credit risk, et cetera, et cetera. So we have made sure that climate risk, both physical and transition, is a lens through which we review all of those policies and those approaches and processes. And then we would build in KRIs to track appropriate risk. So I'll give you one example there. Our general account, which is so Sun Life is an asset manager and an asset owner. The general account represents the assets that we own and manage. So if you come and you buy a life insurance policy from Sun Life, you would be paying us money over, say, 40 years. That money goes into something called the general account, where we invest it and manage it. And we have to track and manage our liabilities to make sure that we're able to pay out your life insurance policy based on your health risk in the future. So that money gets invested. That's called our general account. And that we're an asset owner. So as it comes to being an asset owner and our general account, right, we want to make sure that we're investing it in a way that aligns with our corporate vision and values, and that we understand our risk, our climate risk. And so, we did an exercise with OSFI, a standardized climate scenario exercise, which helped us understand, using assumptions we were provided by the regulator, but helped us understand, some of risk. And so part of that, we built in KRIs and a whole process around that. We now have investment portfolio managers have to attest that they've done physical risk assessments annually on every single thing that they've invested in. So I can't do that, right? My team can't be all over that, but we can make sure that the process is happening. And then what we do ensure is that there's an attestation and then we also vet and would understand. So we have a physical risk tool that we've brought on board that we tested and put all through the rigor. And now I think the majority of our asset managers have purchased the same physical risk tool because it was of value, and they're able to use that for their assessments. And so it's that, like, I view my role as enabling the processes. Another great example would be M&A transactions, right? So if Sun Life was looking at purchasing, we made an announcement last week, we purchased a multi-family asset management, a multi-unit family firm asset management in the US. And, as part of the M&A work, the CSO has a sign-off on any M&A transactions. So my team will go in and they will work with the local team, and they will ask, depending on what it is we're acquiring or selling, we would ask the questions. What is the climate risk to Sun Life? Do they manage their emissions? Do they monitor them? Do they have ESG policies in place? All of those things. And then I get a report, and then I get to sign off or not on the transaction based on my view. And I provide a view to the board and to the executive team on the transaction. So this particular one, it's multifamily units, and we did physical risk assessments. So we took the postal codes and geolocating of a selection of assets that this company owned, and we were able to run them through the physical risk tool. And then we were able to ask the company questions like, well, have you thought about flood risk? Have you thought about this? Because we're trying to manage. And so my team did run that with another team. But those are two really good examples where we would get involved and into. I don't own the decisions, but I get to be involved in providing advice and recommendations and help in the processes. And in particular, I own the expertise for climate risk for the organization. And that runs through our budget planning exercises, our strat planning processes, portfolio reviews. Our team is all over it. So, don't know if that quite gets at your full question, but that's one example of climate risk and how we have kind of ferreted through the organization and embedded ourselves in all of those processes.
I think this is the interesting thing, though, Alanna. And I think from your trajectory at Sun Life and your career and what you've been able to build, you've obviously embedded and integrated sustainability across the enterprise. It's something that every CSO is aware of, tries to achieve. And what I find fascinating about the whole question of integration is that for most people, it's by definition invisible. Like no one knows how you've integrated at Sun Life externally. People inside do, and same with any other company.
$1 million question.
Yeah. So what's the and it is it's sort of this magic thing that we all have to do, the secret sauce, and yet it's unclear as to the roadmap, and each culture and sector is different. So can you, I mean, as you reflect, can you think of, even in the case of where you've gotten to be involved in M&A decisions, like how did that happen? Did it just sort of evolve organically, or were there places you can say, along the way we implemented this, or we latched onto this process that you said is so inherent at Sun Life? Like, can you offer any suggestions?
There's always a bit of magic on all of this, right? There's what I call the push and the pull. So, you can push sometimes against a door that's closed, and you just got to pivot and put your efforts. It's better to push where there's an open door. And so, I think just thinking strategically, I think we sat down early on and we said, what are all the really important processes in Sun Life? Our strat plan process, our business plan process, M&A processes. We brainstormed them all. And then it was, okay, where is there an open door, essentially, right? And let's go ask questions and try to be a bit annoying but helpful, and really
not too annoying, just the right level of
annoying.
The right amount of annoying is really
that, and ask questions and get to understand the process. Like you got to start with learning, and honestly, our board has been incredibly helpful through this process as well. Like, this is not just an Alanna. My team and I have done a lot, but one director asking around the board, okay, well, what does the CSO think of this particular transaction, is the right question, and then that becomes part of the process. So it's the board has been incredibly helpful to us, and that's where director education and understanding climate risk and understanding and playing their role as for an oversight and governance perspective has been really helpful. So I would say, it's part strategy. Start with what the art of the possible. Figure out which processes are really important to your organization. Insurance risk, right? That's on the insurance side of a company, and asset management. Understanding our risks is hugely important. So building our capacity. I'll give you another example. On the life insurance side, we need to understand how climate and health are impacting the health of our clients. We need to understand how that's going to impact morbidity and mortality going forward, so that if we're writing out 40-year liabilities, we're pricing them adequately. This is a huge industry challenge right now. And we have a whole climate and health program, and I want to come back and talk about that we're doing with McGill. But, speaking in the language of our business, I heard this recently, I'm not sure where, but this idea of not just speaking in the language of but being passionate about your business as a sustainability professional, right? Yes. Like, I want us to get this right. I want Sun Life to be around another 160 years. And so it's not just annoying to have to learn about the business. It's actually, I'm passionate about our business and I want to understand it. And so risk is a really important, in this organization and this institution, it's a really important strategic lever to get embedded. And so we did spend a ton of time on risk in particular, and M&A as well, because it shows up very visibly there. And there's rep risk, right? So understanding what the organization cares about was also really important there, because we don't want to make a mistake in a transaction.
So can we just drill down a little bit more on this kind of role of the board and how exactly the board has been really engaged and supportive? And what are the tools that you've used as a sustainability professional with your colleagues, I'm sure, company secretary or general counsel or whoever, chair of the board nominations committee, board chair, and so on. But what have been some of the tools that have worked for you with the Sun Life board?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm really grateful we have an incredible board full of incredibly intelligent individuals who have been, from the start of my role at Sun Life, always really engaged in our work and championing it. So, partnership is probably the one for me that's really important. If a director is asking a question and I don't really understand it, I'll say, hey, could we book a meeting separately? I'd really like to understand your point of view, so that I can integrate it and understand it better. And I've used that quite a bit because it's a lot easier to get in a conversation sometimes, not at the full board table. Education, right? We've been doing a lot of education on climate risk. We bring in external speakers. Sometimes they're great. Sometimes they don't go so well. So taking some risks sometimes to bring in.
Were you looking at me when you said that?
No, I don't think we've ever brought you to the full board, Chris. But climate in particular, particularly in the early days, we have found it really tough to find the right level of speaker because there's people who are really down in the weeds, and then there's a lot of really big thinkers. But what a board cares about is what matters to us and the running of this organization. And Sun Life is both asset management and insurance, and so trying to find speakers who can speak to that has been tough, to be honest. So using external speakers. I think the other one is honestly honing my communication skills and learning. And I've really deliberately tried to work on, and I probably, and if any of my team is listening to this, they'll know that my perfectionism freak flag flies totally when we're preparing board decks, because there's just, trying to bring people along with and make what you're doing clear. And I think, especially when we talk about sustainability and climate, it's so jargony. Right? Even net zero can feel very jargony. And so trying to make it real for the business, sometimes I do well at this, sometimes I don't, but I've really, really worked at communication. And some of the work that Catherine Hayhoe does about, the importance of what can you do on climate change, communicate. And so I've really tried to address and work on my communication style.
And thank you. Do you have a board champion or a committee of the board on sustainability?
Yeah, we have a committee of the board. So we have our governance committee. Sustainability reports into our governance committee, and the chairs of both of those of the committee over the time that I've been CSO have been incredibly, helpful, and they've worked a lot to understand. And they're on other boards, so they have exposure to other issues, and they bring that often to our board, which is also really helpful. We had someone back in 2018 on the board who I'm grateful to every day, because she was asking me questions about the auditability of our sustainability reports, and had we worked with internal audit, and what were our processes and controls, those questions she was asking me back in 2018, allowed me to build a sustainability accounting team. I brought in internal audit in an advisory capacity. And so, when we think about greenwashing, I feel so confident in our processes and controls that we have built around what goes into our sustainability report. And I'm grateful because that was questions from a director, years ago, because she was on another board and brought those questions. So the perspective of the board and their other engagements is also really, really helpful.
And Alanna, when David went into the board detail, I was going to ask, and I think it's still relevant. It relates to board and it relates to your entire team and the way you're approaching this across the organization, which is the course or the way you're doing this staying steady in 2026, or how much have you had to adapt? It's obviously a very volatile geopolitical moment. It is a very complex trade moment. You mentioned, ESG backlash and people sometimes retreating or at least perhaps hiding. How is Sun Life navigating those waters? And has it meant change, or has it meant different style or different tone? Yeah, would love to hear.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing we did was we launched a new strategy in the middle of all of this, right?
Great.
So last year, I like many of my peers in Canada, we had new greenwashing regulation, and we had the ESG backlash going on in the US last year. So we were kind of caught between greenwashing, but at the same time, meeting our client and our fiduciary obligations and trying to report, because we had a new regulation in Canada, but we had some, political changes and jurisdictions everywhere with very different views on climate. And so in the middle of all of that, I could see my team getting kind of down last February and January. And I think I shocked them all with saying, like, let's do a new strategy. Let's own our destiny. Let's get really, really crisp on what sustainability means. It's time, right? We've got all this expertise. We know what matters. Let's get really crisp. So kind of in the middle of it all, we launched the Brighter Futures Blueprint, which, isn't earth-shattering externally. It has 3 pillars. Client, we're really focused on, and you can ask the question around the pillars around, well, why does Sun Life do sustainability? 1, because we want to serve our clients. We want to have the capability to manage their portfolios, manage risk, deliver returns in a way that protects their investments. And we want to be a partner of choice for clients, that want to work with us, who care about sustainability. Our purpose, as I explained earlier, we can deliver on our purpose better by embedding sustainability into our products and services and innovating, because our purpose, we want to grow the business. And then resilience, which is a common word we're hearing a lot. So when it comes to climate change, it's that shift from values and DNA-driven language to, what we're doing is building a resilient organization. We operate in areas of Asia that are facing, severe weather events, and same across Canada, and US, wildfires, drought. And so we want to be a resilient organization. We want to be around for another 160 years. And so everything that we do now is connected to those 3 pillars. And it's very clear what the business case is for that. And it's about creating a brighter future for our clients, brighter future for the company. And so we kind of doubled down. And then importantly, I think from my role and the role of my team is also viewing ourselves, back to being passionate about the business, but being a partner for the board and the executive team, because we have access to data and we see trends and patterns. We think long-term, multi-stakeholder view, right? Focused on our purpose, where we can help the organization navigate some of these huge changes in the world order. This focus on, in energy and defense, the ability to understand our portfolio exposure to defense. How do we think about that? Previously, that wouldn't have necessarily been a sustainability role, but we have that capability now, and we can think about that. We can think about, access to water and energy in our jurisdictions, and what does that mean for the social impact of, of people. And so I just think viewing ourselves as a partner to this organization as we navigate, these massive 21st century business challenges, AI, energy, security, defense, the breakdown of how we would call some of the global goals, right? Like we've seen a move more towards national priorities versus global goals. And I think sustainability has a role to play in both understanding and meeting those. And so I don't know. I think the shift has really been, we were in a build and we were getting really clear about and crisp on what does sustainability mean to Sun Life? How is it personal? How does it matter? We're very clear on that now. We have a very clear strategy. We have initiatives that are funded. We have capability and expertise, and we're delivering against that strategy. We were embedding it in the organization, and, I don't want to say job done because there's always more to do, but I feel really good about that. And, we view ourselves as a partner to navigate this really incredible world that we're all facing right now. And I think a little bit of owning our destiny and coming out really crisply with a new strategy was really important. And, we know our employees care, right? And we want to inspire our employees. There's so much going on. Anger is increasing, mental health issue. Like it's really tough for people right now. And so I think, where we can inspire and have people feel their work is meaning is really important. And that's part of our role too. So I don't know. It's some pivot, some double down, some, view yourself as a partner to help navigate these big changes. It's all so interconnected.
Could we unpick that a little bit more? Because you're not the first Chief Sustainability Officer that I've heard recently talk about the fact we've got access to lots of data. We have got to have this understanding of some of these big picture geopolitical changes, the questions of AI, the whole questions around ruptures and so on. Does that mean that you become much closer to the people developing and constantly refining the overall corporate strategy of Sun Life? So you're not just having the sustainability strategy, but you're making the corporate strategy of Sun Life much more sustainable.
Yes.
Great. Next question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And the answer is yeah. And that's been the goal, for many years, but absolutely, because we can help provide a lens on things, right? So if we were looking at our portfolio businesses, we would say, okay, well, what do we think about investing in building a business in Vietnam or, Indonesia when we have, massive climate issues as well as, different geopolitical risks that we may want to concern. So yeah, absolutely. We want to be a partner. We want to be at the table. I go to all the board meetings, all the executive team meetings. I'm there as a member of the global leadership team, which includes our executive team plus 3 roles: Chief Sustainability Officer, Chief Actuary, and Chief Investment Officer. So I participate in all of those conversations, and I'm there to provide a lens. I'm also on the quarterly earnings call, but I have never once received a question from an investor yet on sustainability. So I really do get to witness and participate in all of those conversations. But yeah, to participate, you need to be prepared, which means I need to do my homework. I need to, understand what's going on, provide the data. I'll give you another example back to some of this work that we're doing on climate and health. The industry has a large challenge on it's going to sound silly, right? The attribution between extreme weather events and health. So, we know, it's like common sense, obviously, right? If there's wildfires and the air quality worsens, people with asthma are going to struggle. But if someone goes to their doctor to get an asthma prescription, it's just they get an asthma prescription, and that's what shows up in the data. It doesn't get attributed directly to climate change and the wildfire season. So, and that's important because we need that attribution to understand the trends in health and morbidity and mortality and in our pricing. And also, what can we do to intervene to help our clients perhaps not have to get a prescription or not have impacts from these extreme weather events. And so we're working with McGill, and it took us 6 months to get our data ready, and it was my team that did it. We got our data ready, and we now have an epidemiologist from the McGill Center of Climate and Health, and they're working with us. And they're just like, oh my God, the data that you guys have, this is incredible. And so within the first week, he was able to show, direct correlation between increased claims for asthma coverage at the same time that we have by overpinning our claims data with air quality data to show that there's, increasing claims related to it when wildfire season happens. And so then that galvanized internally, well, what can we do? We know air filters work. We know, why don't people put air filters in place? Like, what's going on? So back to our purpose and health, we're now running a pilot with our own employees who this year, and we're going to test like what's needed. Is it education? Is it, monitoring? Is it behavior change? Like, how do we actually get people to put in filters that will make them healthier and be less susceptible during wildfire season? And so, it's taking that data and taking a business problem of pricing accurately risk and our employees, where we can inspire them and get them part of the solution to help us figure this out so that we can better serve all of our clients. And is bringing all of that together as a partner to the organization. That's super fun.
That's good. And is purpose as relevant now, Alanna?
Yeah.
As it was when it began in 2017, 2018?
Definitely at Sun Life. Our purpose is, what gets people to join the company. It gets us up in the morning. It has really galvanized. It is very clear and important here. And so for the sustainability team, deep purpose, or this idea that really working on your purpose means taking a multi-stakeholder long-term view, and connecting across jurisdictions, is something that, just really my team has grabbed and is leading some of the innovative work that we're doing. So absolutely. I mean, your purpose is just, why does your company exist? Right? What do we do every day? Why do we come in? And I think that has been really powerful for Sun Life to have a really clear purpose, and then have our enterprise strategy, our sustainability strategy, everything all connected.
And keeping it vibrant as you have been. Any last questions, gentlemen?
Just reflecting the simplicity with which you answered the purpose question, Alanna. I was thinking that purpose always matters. We should let ourselves be caught in that argument. We should ask how it's being expressed and how it connects to the business. And I loved the very ready response you had there, and then the joy of a conversation overall.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun to reflect on all of this, because you don't often take the time. Some tough questions, like how did we do some of these things? But yeah, I think purpose as a sustainability lens, maybe, Chris, is different, is at a different place. But purpose from a company perspective, like what do you do, is, I don't know. I'm not a student of, but I think it's pretty important.
You're beyond the students. You're now in a masterclass role, and you've done a great service to us and to our listeners.
Thank you for choosing my masterclass today. No, you guys are the masters.
No, we really appreciate it, and it's amazing to see what you've done at Sun Life Financial, and you've an award-winning CSO. You've got a very well-deserved recognition for all your work. So thanks so much for all you do, Alanna, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for the conversation. That was awesome. Thanks.
And thanks everyone for listening, and please share this recording if you're listening to it now. And it's well needed, good fodder and good lessons for us all to be better at sustainability.